It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. The Marc Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Marc is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Marc Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for our weekly discussion of the important political and legal issues of the day. You're welcome to call in at 717-540-0580, 717-540-0580. You can send me a tweet at Marc Scaringi, and I'll read your tweet on the air. For all my columns, prior podcasts of the show, and a look at some great merchandise you can check out the marcscaringshow.com. Today we're broadcasting on Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live again. Hopefully our listeners or our viewers/listeners on Harrisburg 100 can hear us and send in your comments via Facebook, and we'll get them up on the air. Well, it's been a busy week in Washington, D.C. We've had the confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh. We've had an anonymous editorial in the New York Times from a senior Trump administration official who apparently is part of the resistance working within the deep state in the Trump administration to essentially oppose the actions of the president that this particular member of the resistance believes are harmful to the country. We've also seen the return of former President Barack Obama to the political stage. But let's talk about the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. They've pretty much galvanized the attention of the nation, and all eyes and ears have been on Washington, D.C. in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Liberals are not happy with Judge Kavanaugh. Rosie O'Donnell, the president's favorite foil, declared a vote for Kavanaugh is a vote to kill women. A little bit of hyperbole, perhaps. So Rosie O'Donnell poses the first question today for my listeners. According to Rosie O'Donnell, is it true that women will start dying in the streets if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed? Call in now and let me know what you think about Miss Rosie O'Donnell's statement, 717-540-0580, and we'll put you right on the air live. Well, a coalition of groups opposing Judge Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination, they apparently urged protesters to travel from throughout the United States and down to Washington to disrupt the Senate confirmation hearings earlier this week. During the hearings, in the first 2 days of these hearings, protesters shouted, they screamed, and engaged in conduct that really has no place in a hearing of this nature. Several of the protesters had to be removed from the hearing room because they were creating a public disturbance. Almost 150 people actually were arrested during the first 2 days of the Senate court nominee Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, including the Muslim activist Linda Sarsour, and also the actress Piper Perabo, who I've never heard of before. Maybe one of my listeners has, and you can call in and let us know who Piper Perabo is, or you can leave a comment on Harrisburg 100. Almost on both sides, on days 1 and 2 of the hearing, we saw protesters. Some were clad in scarlet red Handmaid's Tales capes with T-shirts emblazoned with "I am what's at stake" and "reproductive freedom for all." They were a constant presence in the Senate confirmation hearings. Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, he approved of these protests. Senator Durbin said, "What we heard was the noise of democracy. And this is what we hear when free people stand up to speak. It's not mob rule." So do you agree with Senator Dick Durbin? Is this what democracy sounds like? Dozens and dozens of protesters disrupting a Senate confirmation hearing with screaming and shouting and carrying on to the point where they had to be physically removed and then subsequently arrested. Is this democracy? This is what one of the leaders of the Democratic Party of the United States Senate, Dick Durbin, believes, and he disagrees that it's mob rule. However, Democratic leaders have been taking some real heat from the left wing of their own party. In a letter to Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer, from 13 liberal activist groups, including the Women's March, Daily Kos, Friends of the Earth, and Justice Democrats, these liberal activists lambasted Senator Schumer. They wrote, "The Supreme Court is on the line, and you are failing us." So these liberal activist groups are really raising the heat on the Senate Democrats to do whatever they can to stop the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh. Well, let's take some calls right now. We have some callers on the line, and we'll go to the phone lines. And we have Ross. Ross, you're on the Marc Scaringi show. And what are you doing, if anything, to support or oppose the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, I'm involved with a bus organization tour to support Judge Kavanaugh in Washington, D.C. on September 26th, which is a Wednesday during the day. And I'm helping to organize various buses, coach buses, to go to D.C. for that day. And there's a website that people could read more about that, and that's called rallypa.net. Pretty simple, just one word, rally, and pa.net. And people could read a little bit more if they forget about what I say on the air here right now. But it's a free bus trip and a free lunch in D.C.
Well, Ross, give us a little bit of a background of who's putting this bus tour together and what the overall goal of the tour is.
Okay. Well, obviously in D.C., there's several groups that are helping to organize it and finance it. Freedom Works, a very conservative group, is doing a lot of the organization. There's some of the Tea Party groups and other groups that are helping to organize it. But they're sort of like the air power. They're trying to organize things down in D.C., but they need the ground troops like us to help get people on the ground informed, to be interested to get on buses and stuff like that, to attend something down there in D.C.
Ross,
and then after the event, to be able to get involved also for conservative causes.
Ross, can you just repeat, how can my listeners in central Pennsylvania who want to go down to Washington, D.C. and rally for the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court, where can they learn more information about your bus tour?
The website would be rallypa.net. Again, rallypa.net, and when they go down to D.C., there'll be various speakers that'll be speaking there. We'll have Senator Ted Cruz. We'll be having, Representative Jordan. We'll have our own local Representative Scott Perry, Brad Meadows, and a few other people, including Senator Rand Paul, who's planning to be there. And then after that speaking event, then there'll be opportunity for individuals, if they want to, they can go to the Congressman office building, and there'll be pre-organized times there. Individuals can actually go to their particular representative or senator and voice their opinions on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, as well as on some other issues. So it'll be a very personal event.
Well, Ross, I want to thank you for calling, and I want to encourage my listeners to get on your website and find out how they can get involved and participate in this tour and this rally for the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh.
Excellent.
And thanks for calling. We're going to take a brief commercial break. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. We're talking about the Senate confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh of the United States Supreme Court. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this brief commercial break.
Buy a new house for your family or a building for your business? Then call Scaringi Law. Our real estate attorneys can assist you in every step of the process, from negotiating the agreement of sale all the way to settlement and closing. As the buyer, you have the right to use the settlement services and title insurance company of your choice. Scaringi Law's Real Estate Settlement Services section provides title insurance and conducts settlements for residential and commercial real estate transactions. Have an attorney, the attorney of your choosing, handle your closing. Call now at 717-657-7770. That's 657-7770. Or see ScaringiLaw.com for more information about Scaringi Law's real estate settlement services.
Now, more of Marc Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial, where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day. There's nothing more important politically and legally than the confirmation of a new justice to the United States Supreme Court. We're talking about the Senate confirmation hearings and how the first couple of days were marred by protesters in the actual confirmation room, in the hearing room. They had to be physically restrained and removed for causing a disturbance. It was quite a circus down there the first couple of days. Nearly 150 protesters have been arrested. We also heard from Ross here in central Pennsylvania, and he is working with Freedom Works to organize a bus trip down to Washington, D.C. on September 26th, Wednesday, and they're having a rally for Judge Kavanaugh. I'm sure they won't be rallying in the Senate Judiciary Chambers hearing room. I'm sure they'll be respectful and polite and will abide by all of the rules down there. But you can find out more information if you'd like to attend the rally for Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation. Check out the website rallypa.net for more details on how you can go down to D.C. with some like-minded central Pennsylvanians who are interested in seeing Judge Brett Kavanaugh be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. I did want to make one other public service announcement, if you will, and that is Scaringi Law and URL Insurance Group are conducting a no-cost, no-obligation educational Medicare 101 seminar on September 12th at 8:30 a.m. at 500 Nationwide Drive in Harrisburg, which is just right down the street here from the WHP iHeartRadio studios. If you are soon turning 65, planning to retire, or are disabled and enrolled into Medicare, this educational seminar is for you. And the location is right off the Progress exit next to the Nationwide building. It's handicap accessible. For more details or to register for the event, contact Jason at 717-657-7770. The event is educational only. No sales or marketing or specific plans will take place. Well, let's get back to the topic of the day, and that is the confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. It appears that Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee tried essentially to sabotage the confirmation hearing right from the beginning. They repeatedly interrupted the chairman, Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, as he was trying to open up the meeting and open up the hearing and just welcome the judge and his family. Senator Kamala Harris, a Democrat from California, repeatedly interrupted Chairman Grassley. Democrats claimed there were thousands of papers pertaining to the time that Kavanaugh served as a secretary to President George W. Bush that should have been turned over or that were turned over too late for Democrats on the Judiciary Committee to read them and digest them. And so Democrats were leading an opposition to the confirmation hearing and trying to have it adjourned. But Senator Grassley was having none of that. And it's a shame that we had to endure the various disruptions by the protesters and the interruptions by members of the Judiciary Committee itself because there was an exchange between the chairman of the committee and the nominee, Judge Kavanaugh, that was rather enlightening. Where Judge Kavanaugh was explaining his jurisprudence, was talking about how he approaches cases, how he interprets the Constitution, some of his guiding principles in doing so, which is the purpose of the hearing in the first place. And I was rather impressed. I thought the judge did an amazing job explaining the United States Constitution, his particular jurisprudence, and I think Americans should be very proud of this particular nominee. Judge Kavanaugh said the first quality of a good judge in our constitutional system is independence. And throughout the confirmation hearings, the judge has been asserting his independence as a judge and as a member of the judicial branch. Democratic senators were repeatedly asking him questions that were hypotheticals, but really focused on trying to determine how he would rule on legal and political issues that are important to those Democratic senators and their key constituencies. And Judge Kavanaugh was repeatedly explaining that he has to be independent from the legislative branch, and he can't try to answer their questions about how he would rule on cases, on specific legal issues, because that would look like the judge is kowtowing to the members of the committee who have the authority and responsibility to either give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down on his confirmation. So just in the very opening hours of the hearing, Judge Kavanaugh is giving a lecture to those Senate Democrats about what an independent judiciary is all about. And I thought that was instructive. I'm sure it was lost on those members, those Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee, who really were just looking to try to pin this judge down on how he would rule on issues of importance to them and their constituencies. But the judge gave specific examples of how important it is within our constitutional system to have an independent judiciary. He talked about Brown versus Board of Education. And in that case, that's a seminal case where the United States Supreme Court found that segregated public schools are unconstitutional, represent an unconstitutional violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And those segregated school laws were prominent in many southern states, put into place by southern governments, by legislatures, and signed into law by governors in the legislative and the executive branch. And Kavanaugh is saying, well, here's the judicial branch coming in, being independent of the other two branches and striking down laws that they had passed that violated the equal protection rights of black Americans, predominantly in the South. So there's the judge giving, I think, a brilliant example of the independence of the judiciary. Another case that he cited on the first day of his confirmation hearings is Youngstown Sheet and Tube v. Sawyer, and this is known as the steel seizure case. And this is where the United States Supreme Court struck down President Truman's seizure of steel mills across the country. This was during the Korean War. President Truman was fighting the war in Korea. It was undeclared. It was unconstitutional, in my view. This was a President Truman war, and he wanted to make sure he had steel readily available to put into the war machine to fight the war in Korea. And so Truman got involved in disputes between steel management and steel unions and attempted to seize the steel mills with government agents and government troops and run the steel mills to produce steel for President Truman's war in Korea. And the United States Supreme Court slammed President Truman for doing this, citing he has no authority in the Constitution, absent congressional authorization to do what he did. And so there is Judge Brett Kavanaugh citing the importance of an independent judiciary to rein in an otherwise unchecked president. And I think that was a very good example. You know, interestingly, our Democratic and liberal friends talk about how President Donald J. Trump is unchecked. and is using the power of the executive branch in unprecedented ways. That he's going beyond his authority as set forth in Article 2 of the United States Constitution. Of course, he's not. President Trump is acting within the confines of his limited authority under the Constitution. But the hero of the Democratic Party, their own President Harry S. Truman, actually attempted to seize steel mills across the country and compel them into producing steel for his war effort in Korea. I mean, it's a remarkable, almost fascist takeover of a private industry by the chief executive officer of the United States, by a president. It comes close to the definition of fascism, where you have private ownership of the means of production, but government control. And that's what President Truman attempted to do, but was struck down by the Supreme Court, by an independent judiciary. And this is what Judge Brett Kavanaugh was talking about on the first day of his confirmation hearing, lauding the Supreme Court's decision to assert its independence and stop a president from essentially becoming a tyrant and doing whatever the heck he wanted to do. Now, this lesson, regrettably, was lost, I think, on those watching the hearings, because we had disruptors and we had protesters really acting outside of the rules and outside of the law, and many just acting like children. And so we missed this very important lesson, so I thought I'd bring it up today. We're going to take a brief commercial break. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.
Your Saturdays just got a lot more interesting. Marc Scaringi Show is on WHP 580 at 1 p.m. every Saturday. Hi, I'm attorney Marc Scaringi. If you are passionate about your rights and freedoms and want to make America great again, I welcome you to participate in my politically charged forum that puts America first. You can join in Saturday afternoons at 1 right here on WHP 580 AM, online at WHP580.com, and on the iHeartRadio app.
Let's get back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism, where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day. We're talking about the Senate confirmation hearings of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Regrettably, they were interrupted repeatedly by Senate Democrat members of the Judiciary Committee, led by Kamala Harris of California, Cory Booker of New Jersey, and others, and also protesters in the hearing room, repeatedly screaming and shouting and having to be carried away and arrested. I think almost 150 people were arrested in the first 2 days of that hearing. And it's a shame, because that's all the media coverage has been about. Yet it's a very substantive discussion between some of these senators and Judge Kavanaugh in many cases, and we can really learn a lot about who Judge Kavanaugh is and what he's all about as a judge, and how he will approach the role of being a United States Supreme Court justice. And he took great pains to explain the importance of an independent judiciary, and gave several examples and he should be commended for that, and that should be what the debate is all about. So we've had protesters from the left disrupting the hearings. Hopefully that's done. We're going to have apparently individuals who are being organized by Freedom Works to go down to Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, September 26, to rally for the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh. And if you'd like to go down there, it's a free bus trip, and they provide a free lunch. If you'd like to show your support for Judge Kavanaugh, you can check out the website rallypa.net for more information about that effort to show some support for the judge from other Americans, so that the media doesn't just see the left and left-wing groups as being the only ones who are being vocal about this nomination. And I want to thank viewers from Harrisburg 100 who are viewing us live, and some are sending in some comments and asking some questions. And no, the judge did not get confirmed yet, so hopefully that will occur in the very near future. But we've mentioned Kamala Harris, the Democratic senator from California, and apparently someone who is considering a run for the Democratic nomination for president and in 2020. And Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, who is also a contender, or the media is talking about Senator Booker being a leading contender for the Democratic nomination as well. And the two of them kind of led these disruptions, interruptions, and some political stunts. Kamala Harris attacked Judge Kavanaugh personally in an ad hominem attack, saying that Judge Kavanaugh, in her view, after reviewing all of his decisions and papers and other documents, Senator Harris concluded that Judge Kavanaugh is motivated by partisanship, and that he is seeking to win for the Republicans at all cost, and that he has brought political bias to the bench. And then she went into that silly refrain that we've heard Democratic senators launch time and time again, that conservative judges favor polluters over clean air and water. They favor big business over ordinary Americans. They favor the powerful over the vulnerable. And it's just kind of formulaic phrasing, and really shows nothing about what Judge Kavanaugh is actually all about. It's just posturing by the senators to appeal to the left wing of the base of the Democratic Party to give them a heads up on the race coming up. That is, of course, is regrettable. And then there's this other idea that somehow Judge Kavanaugh should recuse himself as a member of the United States Supreme Court in any case involving civil or criminal liability involving President Trump, solely because President Trump nominated Judge Kavanaugh to the court. That is an absurd proposition that's never been offered before in any prior confirmation, that the nominee must recuse himself from any matter pertaining to the president who nominated him. It's just more theater and drama and absurdity. Kamala Harris cross-examined Judge Kavanaugh about whether he had any conversations with anyone in a law firm of a former Trump lawyer. And this was like supposed to be the biggest scandal of the century, that Judge Kavanaugh apparently had a conversation with members of a law firm in which where a former Trump lawyer works. And so this was over 2 days. And one would think that Senator Kamala Harris would have some proof of some horrible conspiracy or collusion that was supposed to have occurred between Judge Kavanaugh and a former Trump lawyer. So she's setting up the cross-examination. And when you do that, when you're doing cross-examination and you're setting up the witness to be impeached on his credibility, you have to have the proof that the witness is lying. And it turns out Senator Harris didn't. So she sets up the cross-examination about whether or not he had conversations with some lawyer in a law firm of hundreds of lawyers, one of which happens to be one of Trump's former lawyers. And Judge Kavanaugh says, no, he didn't. And then Kamala Harris should have been able to deliver the proof that he did, and that it was some nefarious discussion about doing something conspiratorial to somehow obstruct justice or derail the Mueller investigation. But none of that happened. I mean, Kamala Harris had nothing. She had nothing to impeach the judge with when he said he didn't have the conversation. So it's just more political grandstanding that does nothing to elucidate the judge's thoughts and opinions and his jurisprudence, which is what the confirmation hearing is all about. And Cory Booker, the United States Senator of New Jersey, he was even worse. This is the gentleman who essentially announced that he's Spartacus, that he was performing an heroic feat during the confirmation hearing, and that he was rebelling against the imperial power of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and was no longer going to be treated as a slave as Spartacus was. And my response to Senator Booker is no. You're not a slave leading a slave rebellion against an empire. You're just a leaker of confidential documents that, by the way, turned out to portray Judge Kavanaugh in a very positive light. This was Cory Booker saying that there were all kinds of confidential memos that had not been released to the public by Senate rules, and that he was going to defy Senate rules as Spartacus defied Rome, and he was going to release and publish these confidential memos. Now, when you're engaging in such drama, the confidential memos should say something horrible about the judge. It should reveal a crime or reveal conspiracy or collusion, reveal something deplorable that makes the judge non-confirmable. One would think that's the purpose for all of this drama. So Senator Booker gets the media of the country solely focused on him in his Spartacus moment, and then releases the memos that just confirm Judge Kavanaugh is a good judge and a good lawyer. And with regard to the racial profiling allegation by Senator Booker, Judge Kavanaugh is writing that there should be no racial profiling. Judge Kavanaugh is opposed in the memo to racial profiling. So this is an absolute farce by the Democratic Senator of New Jersey, Cory Booker, and the Democratic Senator from California, Kamala Harris. And I will say to Senator Booker, remember, by the way, Spartacus lost. Spartacus led the slave rebellion, but was killed, and had 6,000 of his comrades ended up being crucified by the Romans and put on crucifixes intermittently on the Appian Way from Capua all the way to Rome. So when you took a stroll from Capua into Rome, there were 6,000 crucified members of Spartacus's slave rebellion. So I'm not so sure that Senator Booker should be comparing himself to Spartacus. It didn't end well for Spartacus and his fellow rebels who had rebelled against Rome. It's all drama. It's all make believe, and it's all a farce. And it's sad because it's distracting from the important issue of the day, which is what is Judge Kavanaugh's jurisprudence? What kind of justice will he be on the United States Supreme Court? We're going to take a brief commercial break. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.
Your Saturdays just got a lot more interesting. Marc Scaringi Show is on WHP 580 at 1 p.m. every Saturday. Hi, I'm attorney Marc Scaringi. If you are passionate about your rights and freedoms and want to make America great again, I welcome you to participate in my politically charged forum that puts America first. You can join in Saturday afternoons at 1 right here on WHP 580 AM, online at WHP580.com, and on the iHeartRadio app.
Now back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial, where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day. We're talking about the Senate Judiciary confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. They got off to a rocky start with protesters in the hearing room, nearly 150 of them removed and arrested for disturbing the peace. Linda Sarsour, the Muslim activist, left-wing radical, was one of the leaders there, and an actress was involved. Some were dressed up like actors in The Handmaid's Tale. I'm not familiar with that. Is that a movie or a TV show? I'm not exactly sure, but perhaps one of my listeners will call in and enlighten me and answer some of the questions, or the first question we asked, which is Rosie O'Donnell texted that if Judge Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed to the United States Supreme Court, women will die, that women will start dying in the streets if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed. What do you think? Is that true? Is that going to happen? Will women die as a result of Judge Kavanaugh becoming a United States Supreme Court Justice? Call in 717-540-0580. 717-540-0580. Interested to hear what you think. Also, we had some political stunts and some fake drama by Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, Democratic senators from California and New Jersey, respectively. And we've gotten some comments from some of our listeners coming in. They like the Cory Booker "I am Spartacus" moment for the theater that it was. This is the senator of New Jersey claiming that he's going to release confidential memos about Judge Kavanaugh back in the day when he was a lawyer in the Bush administration, and that they concerned racial profiling, and that this was going to be very bad for Judge Kavanaugh. But it turns out that the problem is the memos were not confidential after all. And the memos reveal Kavanaugh was actually against racial profiling. And the Bush administration lawyer in charge of releasing the documents claimed that he told Booker's office early Thursday morning that the emails were already approved for release prior to Booker's claim that he was acting like Spartacus by violating rules he believed to be unjust. And Booker was repeatedly declaring that he was violating the Senate rules, which was remarkable. Senator Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, even asked him during the hearings. Senator Grassley said, well, how many times are you going to tell us that you've violated the rules? How many times are you going to tell us that you are Spartacus? And so it led to an amusing exchange in the Senate hearings themselves. But when Booker released the memos, it revealed that Kavanaugh had rejected the use of race or national origin in airport security screening or law enforcement in the aftermath of September 11. So Judge Kavanaugh, when he was a lawyer in the Bush administration, did the right thing. He opposed racial profiling. And this was what Booker was releasing. I mean, what is this? It's like the theater of the absurd. What is Booker thinking when he does this? It's a bunch of sound and fury, really signifying nothing. But as I said, the best part was Chairman Grassley asking Booker, how many times are you going to declare that you violated the Senate rules? And some memes have been going around Twitter and the George Costanza on Seinfeld episode. Remember when George Costanza was pretending to be a real bad boy because he thought it would help him attract beautiful women. And he was suddenly getting attention from a beautiful woman because Costanza was acting like he was a very bad guy, that I think he was a bootlegger. That's right. And so then eventually he had to confess that he wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't a bootlegger. He was just a mild-mannered accountant, and then he lost the girl. And there's another meme going around with Frasier. We all remember Frasier from Cheers, the real straight-laced good guy, disgruntled that he wasn't attracting women to him, so he decided to show everyone in the bar that he was a bad guy, so he ran around the bar with scissors. Because, of course, you're not supposed to run with scissors. But that was Frasier's effort to show himself to all of the beautiful ladies in the bar that he was a bad guy and thus worth dating. And that's what many are reminded when those are the scenes that many people think of when they watch Cory Booker in the Senate Judiciary Committee and on every national media talk show afterwards, advertising to the world what a bad guy he really is for violating rules that apparently he didn't violate, to release memos that are actually exculpatory and laudatory of then lawyer Kavanaugh rejecting the use of race and national origin in screenings after 9/11. So it can't get, it really can't get any more dramatic and really stupid and silly, this Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. But I see we've got some callers, and I'm going to we'll go to the phone booth here, and we'll open up the phone lines, and we'll take some calls. Stephen from Pembroke, you're on the Marc Scaringi Show. Is it true that if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed, women will die?
Absolutely not. That's absolutely ridiculous. Thanks, Marc, for taking my call. Well, no, I seriously don't think there will be women dying in the streets if he's confirmed to the Supreme Court, but I do know that there were millions of females that died in their mother's womb because of Supreme Court justices prior to 1973. That's for sure. Besides that, on the other hand, there are certain women dying in the streets, but that's because of those that support illegal immigration, which I am sure that she is a supporter of. That very one that you just mentioned, what was her name?
Well, that was Rosie O'Donnell, the longtime foil of President Trump.
Right, yeah. Well, you could. She needs to know that there are women dying in the streets, namely the young woman out there from the heartland of America in Iowa that died because of an illegal immigrant, and I'm sure that Rosie O'Donnell supports those legislators that support illegal immigration. So, yeah, they're dying in the streets thanks to her.
Yeah, you're referring to Molly Tibbet. And Stephen from Pembroke, thanks for calling. Appreciate having the benefit of your views. And we'll take some additional calls here in the remaining minutes that we have. We have Bob. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show. What do you think of the Kavanaugh hearings?
I think women have died under the street under President Obama. I would like to ask this question to you. The recession ended, and President Obama took credit for it, but the Federal Reserve actually cut rates to 0+ in January of 2009 before he actually got into office. He raised tax rates, and you got the lowest economic growth in 8 years in the history up to the Great Depression prior to that. Trump lowered rates, and that's the difference. I don't understand why Republicans don't say this. Obama raised rates, had the worst growth.
Bob, we're losing you there a little bit. Maybe you're on a...
That's okay. I got my main point in between the two presidents, the difference. Thank you.
Right. Okay, Bob, thanks for calling. Appreciate having the benefit of your views there. And you're talking about former President Barack Obama, who has returned to the political scene in a speech he gave, I think, yesterday. Was it yesterday? The day before? Maybe yesterday, JC's saying, where President Obama's taking credit for the grand expansion of the economy under the Trump administration. President Obama saying it's as a result of the reforms that Obama put in place, which
I got on the radio.
Which is, of course, not true at all. Remember when Barack Obama was just confounded and confused about how to revive the economy, and was responding to Trump's strong denunciation of Obama economics on the campaign trail, where Trump is explaining, here's how you do it. You cut taxes on businesses. You cut regulations on businesses. You put up tariffs to protect American manufacturing so that we can get manufactured goods being manufactured here, put American workers back to work. That's how you revitalize the economy. That's what Trump did. But remember Barack Obama saying, what do you do? How do you revitalize the economy? What, do you just wave a magic wand? Obama had no clue how to revive the economy, didn't revive the economy, had us in the worst recession in the history of our country, did a terrible job because he just fundamentally doesn't understand what economic growth, how to create and sustain economic growth. I got a little bit off topic there on President Obama, but we were talking today about the Senate confirmation hearings of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who I think will be an outstanding judge to the United States Supreme Court. Hopefully the disruptions and the protests are over, and the Senate Judiciary Committee members can focus on the great qualifications of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. That's all the time we have for listening. Thank you.